Welcome back to Season 4 of Comic Book Nation, the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. I am your host, Kofi Outlaw, and in the studio with me today is my regular co-host, Janelle Wheeler.
Hello, hello.
And Matthew Aguilar.
What up?
Wait, Kofi, I like that as our new slogan.
What?
What did he just say? Something about doing it all for geek culture? That was like...
been our slogan for...
Yeah, it was the way you worded it. I think
It
you
was
worded it very specific. It was
good.
cool. It was dope.
It was so good.
I like it.
Awesome. All right.
We should get it on a t-shirt.
Somebody record it and clip it. But as we get into this today, we got a lot to talk about and a lot of variety today. So we are going to be breaking down the new big fantasy TV wave that's rolling in. We have House of the Dragon on the Game of Thrones side, and this week we have the premiere of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So we are going to be taking a look at both series again and kind of breaking down which each is about and how we feel about both and which one we like better, of course. We're also going to do an early review of Rick and Morty Season 6. I got to see it. I got to talk with the cast.
Nice.
So we are going to kind of give you guys just a look or just a hint of what's coming with that. No spoilers, of course. And we got to break down the latest episode of She-Hulk, which has people all abuzz for reasons both good and bad. And today we are going to be doing a big wrestling segment. We have this kind of trifecta where WWE, AEW, and NXT all have big events coming. So comic book wrestling is going to be very busy this weekend, and we have kind of a roadmap of what you guys should be looking out for. So all of that on Comic Book Nation. Let's get started right at the top. All right, so first things first, let's talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. This is the highly anticipated Lord of the Rings TV show adaptation / prequel that was released by Prime Video, and we got 2 episodes for the premiere. They released a bit early. They were supposed to come out today. They came out last night. Each is about a little bit over an hour, so which gives us about a movie-length kind of premiere for this series. So, The Rings of Power is set in the second age of Middle-earth, and it's kind of the story about, there's a lot of kind of fantastical stuff that happens in the first age of, before, the world beyond the world of Middle-earth and the elves and all these spirits and people fighting. But this is kind of the age when the pivotal acts of the Rings of Power being forged, Sauron kind of deceiving the world, getting them to make these rings before he could subjugate them with the one ring to control them all, and then the kind of last alliance of elves and men came together to fight and kill him, which we saw in kind of the opening backstory of the Lord of the Rings movies, if you're just a fan of the films. But J.R.R. Tolkien wrote a whole bunch about this age, the people, the characters, and what all is kind of going on in this. But, of course, as always, the question is, how does all of that translate to a kind of mainstream audience, as was the challenge with Peter Jackson's film?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take this massive world in history and lore that Tolkien, sketched out and make it something that mainstream viewers can kind of jump into? So I think that for the most part, The Rings of Power does a good job as an introduction of just laying out what the world looks like at this period and what the different races are and where they all kind of are in terms of coordination to one another. There isn't a whole lot in the way of like action and conflict in these first episodes because things are getting set up. And I think if you look at the critical consensus, that's basically what's being said, is that what we do get is, for me at least, interesting and has pulled me back into the world of Middle-earth. But this is kind of a real set of episodes, which is why they were probably released together. But by the end of them, we are hitting the ground like running. There is conflict, there are monsters, there's evil, and we're beginning to see things move. But as a stage setter, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it's interesting, if you've seen just the movies, to kind of see the differences and characters, names you may recognize if you're halfway decent at kind of catching these Lord of the Rings names. Like Galadriel is, Cate Blanchett's character from the first movie. Elrond was Hugo Weaving in the movies. And so you probably catch some of those, but there's still enough new things with the Harfoots instead of hobbits and all of that and their culture and so stuff cute. To kind of keep it fresh. So not a bad start for me. What did you guys think of The Rings of Power?
Well, I'm just really excited about blondes in general. We're really holding it down right now. Our graphic is showing House of the Dragon, but we're definitely talking about Lord of the Rings right now. So it doesn't matter because everybody's blonde and it's great. I loved it. I will say that Lord of the Rings was never like my big nerdum thing. So I don't know a lot of the lore. I just know what I enjoyed. And I liked it. Like I watched the movies in the theater because I had super nerd friends that were like, we have to go see this, but I've never read the books. I've only read the Hobbit book. I of course enjoyed the films, but I wasn't like diehard the way that I was with kind of Harry Potter stuff. It took me a little while to get there.
Gotcha.
This for me is very exciting because I don't feel completely lost, having seen those, but it also it's really fresh to me because I haven't been in this world in so long. And now that I'm so in the geek culture, I'm living for it. Like I'm loving it. And a couple people in the comments said that it was a slow start. I felt that it was a really fast start. But I did watch episode 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there was a lot of progression. I felt like I understood a lot of different aspects that were already happening in this world. And all of the surrounding areas and with all these different, backgrounds of characters. And I was really excited about it. So I'm pumped. Like, I want to see more. If we had to compare, do you like House of Dragon or this better? I'm going to go with House of Dragon. But this is still awesome.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good comparison and I also think, as Kofi said, I think there are certain shows that are important for you to release multiple episodes at once to give a real sense of things. If this had been the first episode only, I would not be as like high on it because I really did. They did a lot in those 2 episodes. They do a lot. There's a lot of world setting. There's a lot of like, hey, that character is this. But I also really enjoy that there's like not new stuff, obviously, because like the family, right? The Harfoots. Like that whole thing is awesome. I'm already jazzed about that. But a lot of that comes from like one paragraph, right? And then it's like just expanded. And
You've read these. Like, have you read every book?
No, I haven't read every book. That's just honestly from research.
Yeah,
things
that's
like
awesome.
that.
Kobe, have you read every book?
No, I have not read. I never read Lord of the Rings. I never really got into those books. Like I've tried several times.
Well, that's good to know because then, we all kind of like it.
Yeah, because my thing is from the movies. Like that was what kind of really brought me back into that world. I was familiar with certain things from the books, but I never read them. I never went into all that. And it was one of those, a lot like Game of Thrones, where people were like, oh my God, why haven't you done this yet? Why aren't you reading these? And I was like, I just never got around to it. But I really like it. That said, I really like the show. I think it's doing some really cool things. It's gorgeous, by the way. This is a beautiful show. It really feels like Amazon, who lacks money in no way, shape, or form. Yeah. But it looks like they actually put money into this.
Yeah, I mean, it is millions per episode. So
you can tell. Because we talked about that with Halo, right? A little bit of like overly ambitious for like what the budget was or could afford. There's no issue so far.
No, I mean the sea thing, they just showed it in the trailer, but like the whole sequence at sea with the big sea monster alone, it's just kind of like the budget on that was massive.
They really are bringing a movie-like experience.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring this back, some people in the comments. First show note, I don't know what's going on with Twitch. I mean, this is like the 4th week. We've had internal discussions about it. We're apparently perpetually working on it, but
we're trying.
Twitch is, I know we have a lot of Twitch fans and we really kind of launched a lot on Twitch, but for the moment, like, it's not working. So we are doing the live show over on our own YouTube page, which we're trying to grow anyway. So if you guys could help us out, just head on over to the YouTube page. It's YouTube.com/Comic Book Nation and subscribe while you're there. And YouTube has been working fine for us. There's a comment section, and until we get this whole Twitch thing figured out, I'm sorry about it to all our Twitch fans because we love Twitch and we love our Twitch fans. But this is like the 4th week, and like I said, I've beat my head against the wall and had all the internal discussions and been sworn we're paying the internet bill and been sworn that the internet guy is working on it and getting sworn that our other shows, there's no conspiracies, why our other shows are running and all of that. But here we are. So, just hop on over to the YouTube and join us because, we're having fun over here. And some people are saying it's too early to compare. Well, I mean, I get it,
True.
but sort of. I mean, House of the Dragons had 2.
Right.
Oh,
Lord of the Rings has had 2.
They're both prequels.
We waited to a 2 and 2. They're both prequels. So yeah, we waited for a 2 and 2, and they're both trying to pull us into franchises that kind of exhausted themselves.
I think
The
it's a
Hobbit
pretty
movies
fair-
exhausted themselves.
Yeah.
The last season of Game of Thrones exhausted itself. So
I think it's a pretty fair comparison.
yeah, all in the game. I think we're going to try to get these YouTube resolutions up and try to get a 1080p. We want something. We're making a show here that is streaming on TV. We stream on Mixable on Paramount Plus Friday nights, and so we're making a
Yeah.
TV show here. So
what
yeah,
the
we're gonna
heck, yeah.
we're gonna keep tweaking this. So yeah, don't worry about
And
that.
we are in the chat, so if
Yeah.
you come to YouTube, we are definitely answering
Yeah.
questions.
And for me, I like Lord of the Rings too, but I do like House of the Dragon a little bit better. I think it's nothing to do with production or anything. I just think the story hits the ground a little bit more in a gripping way. But House of the Dragon can also scar us in really significant ways that this show is clearly not going to do. But yeah, and some interesting things already coming out of this show. Not to spoil anything, but there's a big character introduced at the end of the first episode that people have theories on, and I like that it's keeping us guessing with there are actual Tolkien scholars, that people who do that for a career.
Yeah.
So, I think even those people will be kind of kept guessing a little bit as to what's going on here, and so that's good. So I'm not mad at what this show has done, and it was ambitious to do this, but Amazon looks like so far they are pulling it off reasonably well. So I'm not mad at the Rings of Power at all.
I think I've got Anissa just about ready to give it a shot. To
Yeah.
give Lord of the Rings a shot, because she's never seen the movies.
Yeah.
And she's never seen all the stuff, and she's heard about it though.
Yeah.
And I was like, which one? Well, actually, I told her, I was like, look, here's the thing. House of the Dragon, I don't know if you can handle that first episode. That first episode has that particular scene
Yes.
would be supremely rough, right?
Yep.
So I was like, I don't know if you can handle that, but let's give Lord of the Rings a shot. So she's down, I think.
Yeah, my
so.
fiance is like, I can't believe you watched Lord of the Rings without me. I'm like, well, podcast. Sorry, I have
She
a
won't let
permanent
me.
excuse.
She won't let me watch She-Hulk without her. Like
Yeah.
it's done. Like that's not a thing we do anymore. I'm
I
like,
can't get him into any of the Disney Plus shows,
No.
but I can get him into these. So
Yeah, and from the comments too, yeah, the casts of both shows are killing it. There are
Oh my
already
gosh, yeah.
standouts in both Rings of Power and House of the Dragon. Like young Millie Alcock playing young Rhaenyra is awesome. I'm trying to see. Lord of the Rings has so many people. Morfydd Clark as Galadriel is awesome. Ismael Cruz Cardova as the elf guy who's clearly in love with the human healer. Nazanin Bonaldi as the healer, and they're all doing great. So no hate on either of these shows. What about, before we move on, House of the Dragon episode 2 pulled in just as many, if not more, viewers than episode 1.
It's killing it.
And I really liked episode 2. I thought it was a great follow-up to episode 1. And we even had kind of a nice minor skirmish conflict face-off at an iconic location for Game of Thrones, which was Dragonstone. And we saw Daemon Targaryen and Matt Smith getting to chew a little more scenery and have a little more fun messing with people.
He's so good.
And we got into the usual kind of thing we love about Game of Thrones, which is the politics, the backstabbing, the family drama, and even though it's a talkie, having these intense conversations, which we know will, people are going to get killed afterwards.
off.
Yeah. So, and we even got a villain in the Crab Feeder who has
Oh
his
my
own
gosh.
series of lore in Game of Thrones.
gross.
Yeah, and
That's hard to watch.
House of the Dragon.
There's
I can't
always one.
believe.
There's always one in every episode. It feels
Oh
like,
yeah,
right?
you gotta scar people.
really hard to watch.
Or it's
that
not Game
part.
of Thrones.
Yeah.
And all the creepy, possibly marrying off children stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We
That
gotta-
so I forgot about it until you just brought it up.
Yeah.
That was so bad.
Yeah, it's not gonna get better before it gets worse. But
God.
yeah, that's Game of Thrones for you. Like I said, a little different than Lord of the Rings.
I was gonna say,
great
fantasy
follow-up.
just has a knack for that, right? Law
Yeah.
of surprise.
Well-
there's a lot of those.
Well,
in
actual
fantasy.
history has a knack for that.
That's very
Fantasy
true.
is
So
just
true.
taking.
Very
Wow.
true. Very true.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you, Barkwood Comics. Yeah, I did a whole article breaking down, and it nearly broke me, but it took many days of going down a deep hole of tracing the whole Targaryen family tree, the relevant parts that you need to know about from House of the Dragon to Game of Thrones. There's some spoilers in there. A lot of good research in there, though. But yeah, and it shows you kind of a funny story about this family and how their life kind of in their timeline keeps going in these circle patterns. don't marry your sisters. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Don't marry your sisters unless you live in Shelbyville. If you live in Shelbyville, then I guess you're then there to marry your cousins.
If you take anything away from this episode, that is it. Don't marry your sisters.
Yeah, that's a good one to take away. All right, but anybody else thoughts, wrap-ups on House of the Dragon episode 2?
I just love Damon. He's not as terrible as I thought. Like, I kind of feel for him, and I love that they're actually not just like full villainizing this uncle of our girl, because I was so worried that he was just gonna like injure her or like take her out or something, and I'm really liking that. I'm kind of on his side. Like, it is kind of messed up, and so I feel like we're all gonna start pulling like what team are we on? Like, who do we want? And right now, I'm on his.
It's okay.
Yeah. Need to get you a shirt.
It's going to be interesting to see how this...
But it's just because of Doctor Who. Let's just be real.
It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out week to week. All right, I'm going to do my little plug here before we take a break for Rick and Morty Season 6. So, Rick and Morty's coming back this Sunday for Season 6. I got to see the first 2 episodes and talk to the cast. And... I think the biggest thing to say about Rick and Morty Season 6 is the continued influence of kind of new producer Scott Marder, who's worked on a lot of shows, including like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He came in like Season 5. But he comes in, I mean, his whole MO is coming into long-running comedic shows and being able to help streamline and kind of turn things around. And while I love Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon, I do like that Rick and Morty is in its maturity as it ages, getting a more creative team, people in place who are kind of taking the show in a more, not just, making fun of its own canon and messing with fans about that, but actually getting done, coming out year after year and dealing with some of the main things that fans want to. And so I will just say the premiere is kind of in line. If you know Rick and Morty, it's kind of a mix of the Season 3 premiere and the Season 2 premiere in that it's an episode that very much takes on some of the canonized stuff we've seen and picks up the cliffhanger of Season 5, but also manages to do this kind of sci-fi high concept thing that is, for this episode, interesting in and of itself. So it kind of hits the ground running, and the second episode is, again, another kind of high concept sci-fi thing with a lot of character drama. But it seems like Rick and Morty has really found itself in terms of being able to mix kind of the raunch comedy, the sci-fi stuff, and actual character arcs and drama. And now these characters, and we know them, they know themselves, they found the show, and there's just a sense that they're now leaning into the character of it all a little bit more instead of the irreverence and, playing with these characters, building them up and putting them in different situations and never losing the Rick and Morty-ness of it all.
Right.
Yeah.
But it being a little bit more meaningful and less just kind of adolescent hijinks. And
that
so
actually makes me excited about
yeah,
it.
it's not bad at all. And I very much enjoyed the kind of the first 2 in the beginning and where this season is already and how much excitement they've already put into the season as a whole arc and as individual episodes. So going to be on the lookout for that. Yeah, Sunday, Adult Swim, Rick and Morty is back. I'm sure I don't have to sell it too much. I'm sure by now there's enough people who are eagerly anticipating this. Some people point out so many Rick and Morty alum are now working in the MCU. Yeah, Michael Waldron. Yeah, there's a lot of people who did Rick and Morty who trying to help the MCU sort out that whole mess. And I did ask Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland both about how they feel about seeing people like Marvel try to take on some of the multiverse stuff they've done in Rick and Morty, and they were surprisingly supportive. So we have those interviews on comicbook.com, anime, so check that out. And there'll be lots of Rick and Morty coverage this weekend. We're explaining everything. We're breaking down everything on comicbook.com anime, which covers all our Adult Swim stuff, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. I do. Rick and Morty should be a primetime Emmy nominee, Trey Worrells. We should be able to say that. I mean, it is probably one of the top animated shows running of this era, so I'm not mad at that. All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we have so much more fun stuff to talk about. We got to talk about the latest issue of She-Hulk, the latest episode of She-Hulk. We got to talk about everything that's going to be going down in wrestling this weekend. And of course, this wouldn't be Comic Book Nation if we didn't talk about comics as well. And so with some pretty epic comics to talk about this week. So stay tuned. Be back with us. We'll be back after the break. Subscribe to the YouTube while you're waiting.
Do it.
Welcome back to Comic Book Nation, the only show that does it all for geek culture and the official podcast of comicbook.com. We're back. We just discussed both the Lord of the Rings TV series, Rings of Power, and House of the Dragon, Episode 2. Plus, we gave you guys a taste of what's coming in Rick and Morty Season 6 this weekend. But now, it's time to talk about She-Hulk. So, just real quick, we have She-Hulk Episode 3 that is now out on Disney+. And for me, this wasn't like the biggest episode. It was a very sitcom episode. I mean, they even make fun of it in the episode talking about their A and B storylines and things like that. But definitely with some highlights. We got to see more of Tim Roth returning as Emil Blonsky, the Abomination, for his court case. We got to see this was kind of the first time in the series I think we've had a legitimate B storyline where you had Pug defending Jen's old, I forget his name, but old douchey law firm buddy in this kind of light elf scam, shapeshifter scam, featuring Megan Thee Stallion, who of course made her, nobody could keep that under wraps, leading into this episode. We tried here, I told you guys, I teased it when I had seen the first 4 episodes of She-Hulk, but I kept my mouth shut.
Yeah, you never let on.
Nope, I wanted people to be surprised, but of course, that no secrets stay secret in this industry. So yes, Megan Thee Stallion made a big cameo appearance on She-Hulk, and now the world can't handle the post-credit scene we got of She-Hulk twerking with Megan Thee Stallion, which seems to have broken quite a few people's brains. But for me, this was just kind of a standard sitcom episode. I mean, obviously the highlight was having the whole Abomination stuff. Oh, also people are also mad about the debut of the Wrecking Crew, quote unquote, that we got, this kind of comedic version of the Wrecking Crew. But I think this episode also kind of illustrated what She-Hulk can do with so much with just one episode. We did this whole Incredible Hulk resolution thing with the Abomination and set him up for a possible future in the next chapter in the MCU. We did a celebrity cameo. We had all these little Easter eggs, about the Wrecking Crew and who they're working for and why are they trying to get She-Hulk's blood and all those questions. And so, this show can do so much with Marvel lore and set up so many things. Oh, and of course, Wong was back. We had a Doctor Strange cameo. There's a lot going on here. So we had a Doctor Strange kind of crossover with Wong playing a more prominent role in this episode. So, to me, it was just a good kind of basic episode, but one that it would be my kind of example of how much She-Hulk can do in the span of just a sitcom to kind of move things around in the MCU. So.
Oh yeah,
that was my takeaway.
Yeah, beautifully said. I mean, it was different. It's different than the other 2 episodes, and to me, it makes it feel a little bigger now that we have the Wrecking Crew and whatever that's going to turn into. It's not just episodic, like we're going to solve this one case in this one episode, and then we're going to solve another case, and it felt like there's going to be like a larger picture. that was the first time I really felt that in this series so far. So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm loving every episode. This is one of my favorite shows on Disney Plus, like ever. And that makes me excited. Yeah.
Yeah, and shout out to the VX artists. You know, a lot of stuff has been said about Marvel VX artists, but it's not all work, guys. Sometimes you gotta animate some She-Hulk ass twerking, you know? That's not a bad job.
Oh my God. Imagine like coming home from work during that, like you're working on that sequence and like, hey, what are you working on right now? Well.
No, I would imagine the meetings. Like, people sat down, they did physics, they had like aerodynamic charts of like, how does a butt move? They probably had to watch endless twerking videos to really get a sense of how a woman with that large, with those kinds of assets, would be moving.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have been there just for the research team. You know, if Marvel ever needs VX research like that again, holla at your boy. All right.
This is my favorite episode of the show, by the way.
Oh, this was all right. Well, go in. Why?
Nice.
Because I feel like finally, like whereas the first two episodes, mostly the first episode, really felt like, oh, this is an MCU show, like this is an MCU tie, right? And then the second episode, I felt like was kind of half, it's kind of split between that. I was trying to find what it wants to be. And here, everything crystallized. Like it crystallized it to what we kind of, or a lot, I won't say all of us, but a lot of people wanted from a She-Hulk series, which was this kind of sitcom style format from beginning to end. Like this felt like a complete thing. Like it really settled into its sense of humor. Looking at the camera pop-ins all snapped. They were all funny. They were real quick and move away, right?
Yeah.
It felt like it knew what it wanted to do. The Wong stuff, where that pops in, and like the comedic timing of it was very much, reminiscent of some of those kind of great, some of those fun law procedural comedies that we've had in the past. Like it really felt like it settled. And also I will say, just Maslany is just like so natural in this role, and the stuff she's doing just with the other supporting characters. Also, the B plot was genuinely funny. I laughed out loud several times because it's always the elf. It's always the person.
Yes.
You always know it's her, the judge, and like everyone looks over, and like the fact that everyone else is in on the gag, but it's still like this person. Like she was arrested solely because of impersonating the judge. She didn't actually do any time other than for that. Everything was just money, right? So it was great. I just really enjoyed this. And I will say, Tim Roth, I like watching Tim Roth in anything is always super fun. He's just having fun with this part. Like all the pen pal wives in the back. There's just so many, and even in the after credits. Not the after credits, sorry. The credits themselves like are still kind of having fun telling stories where he's in the bus and they're all chasing after him. That's just a piece of artwork. But it, again, adds to the story. I really enjoyed this. I feel like if we keep going where this is the style from here on out, this will move up my ranks.
I just want to point out something that people have been saying kind of online about like Tim Roth and Abomination. And, Marvel and the makers of this show made it clear when it started that like when we have characters who come to She-Hulk, like they are going to be comedic. So, like, Emil Blonsky in this version, yes, he was super serious soldier in The Incredible Hulk, but when he's on She-Hulk, he's going to be a little bit funnier.
Yeah.
We're going to get Zen Blonsky. The Phase Zero, our other podcast, Phase Zero host, Jamie Girac, did an interview with Tim Roth this week, and he also suggested that it's quite possible that Emil Blonsky is just playing the system and that there could be more to Abomination once he gets out of jail, which, spark your Thunderbolt theories now, but that he could just be doing this to get out of jail, and that old kind of conniving Emil Blonsky could very well still be there. He didn't say that out loud, but he did kind of hint, like, is this how he really is right now? Like, he kind of threw doubt. So check that out. That's over on our Marvel page. So be sure to check that out. But so just remember that whoever is coming into She-Hulk is going to take on a more comedic angle for that, because this is what that show is. It doesn't mean that any of these characters, including She-Hulk, won't have more serious things to do when they're not in She-Hulk. So keep an eye out.
I will say
Just
this is
keep
my
that in
favorite
mind.
part of Wong, the version of Wong.
Oh, yeah.
I like this version of Wong even more than I did Multiverse of Madness. Like, he feels like he's on his, like, he's actually doing his job, number one. Which, please, a Sorcerer Supreme actually doing their job is like a novelty in the Marvel Universe. So he's doing his job, he's super busy, he's very polite, but like also very to the point of like, no, I took him. I took him and I did this. And they're like, they confront him like, you committed a crime. And he's like, oh, okay, I have to go now. But he's very polite about it. I just love, if we can keep this Wong in everything else, I'm good.
I mean, I'm loving Wong as like the new
He's
Nick
great,
Fury.
man. He's great.
And Benedict Wong is hilarious. He's got a lot of great skills. So whenever he shows up, it's a good time. Yes, and he was a great Target employee.
Yeah.
Wong. All right, so that's She-Hulk. Sounds like we're still all on board for that.
Yeah.
Moving right along then, let's talk and get our special guest in here so we
Yeah.
can talk about some wrestling. Special guest, well, more like regular fourth member of this little
It's like an honorary
Beatles
member.
trio.
I
Yeah.
love that.
It's Connor Casey who's back with us today.
Yay, Connor!
And all right, Connor, you and Matt, you guys get some time to talk about everything that is going down in the wrestling world. And it seems like you guys are going to be busy this weekend.
Yeah, there are 3. It's a rare thing. There are 3 shows this weekend. We got 3 different, I will say, 2 pay-per-views and a premium live event, which still sounds dumb when I say it out loud.
Here's the issue with that. Do you pay for Peacock? Then you are paying to view the pay-per-view. So that's why that PLE never makes sense.
That's true. Very true. Yeah, I get it free through my Xfinity subscription, so technically I have to call it a premium live event. but yeah, everyone else has to do it. Of course, we have Clash at the Castle, and then we have for NXT we have Worlds Collide, and then it's capping off with AEW's All Out. So like, not only do we have like 3 different events, but also 2 really big ones. WWE is super hyped up. Clash at the Castle, and then All Out is one of obviously AEW's biggest shows. So kind of going just from there, just broadly, I guess, Connor, which show has the best lineup? Like, which is the one that you're looking forward to the most? I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway.
So, Matt, I'm actually going to play against character a little bit on this one because looking at all 3 cards, I think Triple H is going to walk away from this weekend as the winner because he is going to prove that less is more. And in that All Out, while there are some great matches there, and I'll name a couple for you. They're batting 1,000 when it comes to the Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and Buck storyline. And I don't think this weekend is going to be any exception. I think that 4-way interim women's title match is going to be great.
It's gonna be
I think this weekend could be the crowning moment for Athena, while also moving Jade Cargill into the next stage of whatever they want to do with her. And I think just having Eddie Kingston versus Ishii casually on the kickoff show is madness. And it's the kind of madness that I absolutely love. My issue with All Out is that I don't think there's a way to book CM Punk versus Jon Moxley that satisfies everyone. Having a 30-minute competitive match will have complaints. Since the first match was a 3-minute squash, people are going to go, wait, why didn't Mox just kill him again? Moxley winning outright isn't going to satisfy the people in the Chicago crowd where it's taking place. And I don't think they pulled the trigger all the way on a heel turn from Punk. So if he just straight up wins and it's the Rocky 3 ending, you're going to have a lot of angry critics online being like, but why did Moxley beat him so easily the first time? Whereas with Clash at the Castle, I think it's a lot easier to make people happy, especially if they're going the direction I think they're going with Roman and Drew. Also, just the sheer fact of you're in a UK crowd, it's the first stadium show they've had in 30 years. If you've ever seen British wrestling crowds, they are their very own breed, and they take a lot of notes from soccer matches. So expect a lot of singing and constant chanting. That show, just for the crowd alone, is going to be a lot of fun. So I think WWE walks away the winner as a result of that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue with that. I will say for me, it's very much that. I think the combined, while obviously like Worlds Collide is not going to be kind of put up on the level of either of those 2 pay-per-views, right? Because those are like 2 main roster things. I still think it's a supremely strong card. on the Worlds Collide thing. So I feel like we'll still have some. I mean, you had me at Carmelo Hayes and Ricochet. That's gonna be a banger. It's gonna be a great match. And there's several of those matches, like the tag team match. That's gonna be great. So like we've got 2 unification title matches, and like those are gonna be fun. So there's a lot going on there. So I think the combined like NXT Worlds Collide as a nice little, kind of appetizer, if you will, to that, and then combined with Clash at the Castle's strong card, I think that is it. Also, I agree with you on the Punk and Moxley stuff. I think I was fine with the squash if we then move Punk into that full heel. If like that's the mechanism we need to get him into that full heel mode, cool. I'm cool with that. It was a swerve. It was, it shocked everybody. Cool. And then we move him into the next phase. And then he gave that promo, and I didn't like that promo at all. I just did not. It's probably the one that probably the worst one since Punk has come to AEW. He's been killing it on the mic as always, but that one was just weird. 1, in execution, but 2, just because it gave us this weird like, okay, well, what are you? we don't know where you are in this. So I agree with you. I think a lot of people are going to be pissed either way. And that's a booking pretzel that I don't even know if Tony Khan can figure out and unravel. But All Out still has a strong lineup. I guess overall.
2 notes on that is if that had been spread out, the squash, then the hey, I'm doubting myself, and the pep talk from Ace Steel, where he's basically playing Mickey to Punk's Rocky.
That's true. Yeah.
If that had taken place over the span of 2 months.
Yeah,
I think this flows a lot better than the fact that it's taking place over 2 weeks.
So why do you think they did that?
I think it was a simple matter of they wanted, and Tony talked about this on the call yesterday, they wanted to do something different. Instead of we're just going to have these 2 talk in the ring for 3 straight weeks, trading verbal barbs. They wanted to think outside the box a little bit and go, okay, we have the squash. Punk has to overcome his mental instability following the injury. Now we get the real match. Doesn't work for everybody. He's said outright that he's not going to try this every time. I feel like this was their attempt at trying something different. So That's why we got it the way we did. And you also mentioned just the matches for Worlds Collide and Clash. When you add them together, it's 11 matches. Yeah. That equals the number of main card matches for All Out on top of another 3. So when I brought up earlier the whole less is more attitude, I think some people are just going to like Clash more because it's going to be a clean 3 hours and 6 matches. Whereas All Out, we're going to be sitting there 11 going, God, we've still got 3 matches left.
Well, that's okay. So that has actually been a pattern. That has happened the last couple of events I have watched for AEW. Have been really good. Like they've had great matches and they've had killer moments. But my God, there is this tone of like, okay, I'm good. Like I'm done. I don't need another one. And like last time, obviously, or like before, right, when they stretched it for the NBA play, I understand like circumstances like that. That's different. But just overall, there is a lot of that like putting too much on that card. There's a couple matches that don't need to necessarily be here. They can be saved for something else.
And I think the best way you combat that is you take your Dynamites and your Rampage that week of, because they're doing this thing now where they just make it a whole week of Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. We've got the same arena all 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Make those your pay-per-view weeks. Make it like, hey, this is the all-out episode of Dynamite, the all-out episode of Rampage, and the all-out pay-per-view. And split the matches up so that, A, Rampage is actually, must-see television all of a sudden, and B, All Out doesn't feel like a 7-hour marathon.
Right. Agreed. No, I think that's a good thing. And before we move on to the next thing, Gunther versus Sheamus is going to be a slam. That is going to be great. And I'm so happy Gunther is not like being written off TV and stuff as those reports said of the old regime. And then for Athena, I think you're right. I think that happens. And then Jade can move into that AEW World Championship picture, right? Is the natural next step for her. So I think that's great.
One last thing we do need to consider with this weekend is that this is the first true Triple H production when it comes to pay-per-view. You can say SummerSlam was the first of his era, but all of those matches were booked by Vince, and the vast majority of the TV building up to that show was a Vince production. This is 100% pure cut. This is Triple H. And I think he is looking at that as, I got to make a big impact. This is my first stadium show. We got to do some stuff that gets people talking.
I agree. And so that leads us to our last thing, because we're looking at this, the Triple H era has been very promising so far. It's gotten off to a really fun start. So yes, this is kind of that first big benchmark. Moving forward, and then of course coming off of this for Khan, there's a lot of questions and things like that. AEW has had their own little bit of, kerfuffle stuff behind the scenes, right? So people are looking at what he can do for the future. What are 2 moves or changes or even just matchups that you want to see happen moving forward that'll kind of, for you, be what sets it off into a right direction for both companies?
So for WWE, I am not trying to pick on this guy, but it immediately popped in my head when you asked the question. Send Dominic down to NXT. He gets so much time on Raw, and the poor kid just needs to cut his teeth in the Performance Center and on NXT proper. He didn't know quite how to use the kendo stick when he had Rhea standing there. That storyline's getting a little kinky for my taste. Everybody has different strokes for different folks. But I don't see where this goes on public national television. Twitter is an entirely different story, and they're fun. But the other big change, and it ties into the main event, and it's split the championships. I've seen so many predictions this week where I have not heard a convincing argument for why Drew McIntyre should not win. And I've heard, what about The Rock at WrestleMania? The Rock has told this very website he is not coming back from a championship reign. So why on earth does Roman need to have the title if you're running the match anyway? Cody Rhodes is in the background. He only wants the WWE Championship. He does not care about the Universal Championship. So when he comes back, it's a bit of a miss. It doesn't quite make sense that he's chasing after the title he doesn't really care about when all of the story momentum is for the other one. Raw, for as good it has been in the last couple of weeks, it does not have the momentum it needs, and it gets with a world champion somewhere on the card. And you need to have that split. And Roman has outright said, my schedule's not changing. It's stay in this part-time form. And USA Network is sitting here going, well, why don't we have a world champion when Fox occasionally gets one? So split the titles, have Drew win, and we don't need to complicate this. He can come out the next night on Raw and say, you know what? I have been chasing the WWE Championship for 2 years. I do not have the same connection with the Universal title. And I think it was a mistake that these were unified. I am relinquishing the Universal Championship. Let SmackDown figure that out, and let me go back to being Raw's champion and actually get to do it in front of fans like I couldn't do it 2 years ago. Or if you want to throw a little bit of wrinkle in it because he hasn't been on TV in a minute, have Paul Heyman come out the next night and said, because I'm the wise man, I changed up the contract. Last night's match was only for the WWE Championship. Roman Reigns still has the Universal title. And go from there. Split the titles. Bring order back into this thing.
Okay, so
as for AEW, these ones are a little bit simpler. Your roster is basically healed up. Take a breath. Mm-hmm. Get back to long-term storytelling. And then you can relieve the pressure of an overinflated roster by getting that Ring of Honor deal done. I don't know what is holding that back. I don't know how much of that is Zaslav and what's going on with Warner Brothers Discovery, but it needs to happen so that Dynamite can get back to being the consistently great show it should be.
I think those are all great, by the way. I will say, because wrapping this up in a bow, I will say for both rosters, I have one that applies to both. I love the returns. This is awesome. It's awesome to see. And these were people I enjoyed. Like, I like Karrion Kross. I like Scarlett. I like Hit Row. I love Dakota Kai. Like, I love.
No love for Dexter Lumis. How dare you?
Dexter Lumis. I love that. The fact that Index is back just makes me happy in general. I just love that, right? So we've got some great. Johnny Gargano's back, right? So there's amazing returns, and I love it. However, I don't want it to be, because of course there's rumors of another person returning on Raw, right? So I don't want it to be like we need to like just bring everybody back, because then we're back to maybe like not having enough TV for everybody. And to me, that is something that is hurting AEW right now. So for AEW, I also say, stop signing people. Find TV for the people. There's a lot of people, very talented people, that are getting kind of lost in the shuffle over there. And so hey, I know you have hours of TV on YouTube and stuff, but people are looking at Dynamite and Rampage, right? People look at Raw and SmackDown. Like, I get it. And NXT, obviously, but it's kind of its own thing. So stop signing people, both. Stop bringing everybody back, stop signing everybody, and let's maximize who we have. The other one I would say for WWE is, you know what? I kind of agree with you. I don't know if it happens here, but I do think soon, very soon, we gotta split the titles so Raw can have its own and SmackDown can have its own to free up storytelling possibilities. On the AEW side, I will say it's Tony time. So if you're not gonna have Thunder take that title and continue to have that title because obviously injuries and things like that, okay. So let's start that train, shall we? Let's start the Tony Storm train, because it's gonna be awesome.
Well, that was the plan, so they're probably just going to go ahead with it anyway.
I'm good with that. So yeah, that is wrestling. Of course, you can catch all of our wrestling coverage right here over the entire weekend at comicbook.com, and we will have tons to say about it. And look for our predictions as well soon. So thank you, Connor. Appreciate it, man.
Later.
All right. Thank you, Connor, for coming on and talking some wrestling with us.
Yeah.
Lot to watch this weekend. If you're a wrestling fan, as you just heard, be sure to get in and see how all our predictions shake out over the course. Keep your eyes glued to comicbook.com/WWE or wrestling. I forget what our page is called. I think it's still just called WWE, yes?
That is a complicated answer, but yes, we are comic book wrestling.
Okay. All right. So there you go.
Bang.
Final segment today, Matt. Take it away. What are our comic books of the week?
All right, so first off, we're gonna lead with this is definitely a fifth week in comics, so I felt bad because literally I looked around and I was like, a lot of these books are annuals and a lot of them are like special one-shots and nothing short of like 30 something pages. They were all like 80 and 46, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, guys. So we're gonna start off with Amazing Fantasy number 1000, obviously celebrating Spider-Man's. And this was this is again a lot like their other collections, right? It's a collection of short stories, a bunch of different creators that people will know and love. And it starts off I thought anyway, it started off very strongly. This is one that like I didn't really understand where this story about a kind of small time crook is going, and Spider-Man just seems to have it out for him, right? And I just love how they take them. By the way, we will be getting into spoilers on these comics because I find it hard not to talk about it without talking about spoilers. But this one kind of starts off with a very like, why are you messing with me? And like you see this story play out over years, and Spider-Man just keeps apprehending this one dude. And then it's this kind of fun, lighthearted story, and then it takes a real quick segue, a real quick twist, and then you're just like it just all kind of comes together and resonates in this moment of like, oh, well, of course, this is the reason he keeps finding him, because yes, his crimes are small in the grand scheme of things. They're not alien invasions and they're not these big world conquering things, but they've had a profound effect on people and Peter specifically. And just the way the artwork brings all that together, I thought was really cool. There's a couple other stories. There's a great story that I loved where it's actually in the future, and it's his 60th birthday.
That's my favorite of these.
Is that your favorite? Well, I'm gonna let you get in on that one then, because
it's just so good. You're gonna wrap it up perfectly, but guys, this is like so touching and kind of heartbreaking, and I was not ready. I was not ready for this, Matt.
It really hits the things. It's basically set in the future when he's turning 60 and he's still Spider-Man. He's still doing his thing, still saving people, but like there's a little bit of that, the reflexes don't quite work as quick as they used to and stuff. And then it ends up in this really I really honestly at one point thought, oh my God, they really killed him.
Me too.
Really thought they killed him.
Me too.
And then it kind of goes back into the heartwarming. MJ steals the show.
Oh, absolutely.
In this
MJ
story.
Is so good in this.
But there's a lot of really fun stories here. They're not all like that kind of super deep. Some of them are fun. Some of them take a little more of an analytical look on him. So I just thought there was a lot to really like here. I don't always recommend giant 80-page books, but this one I think especially if you're a Spider-Man fan, this is
Even
this is
if
worth
you're
it.
not the biggest Spider-Man fan.
Oh, you're not? That's right.
I mean, it's not. I'm not into the MCU Spider-Man. But that I'm terrible for that. Everybody like tells me all the time. But comic book Spider-Man has like won my heart, especially with this. And I feel like even the like less heavy stories, they're still so wholesome and like lovely. And that's what I like about Spider-Man. Like that's what I'm really loving about this. It's just like he's so genuine.
Yeah.
And they really like show that in almost every single story in this.
Kofi, are you I forget where you kind of fall on the Spider-Man love spectrum.
No, I mean, I always love Spider-Man. It's what helped get me into comics, but some modern Spider-Man comics can be kind of hard to follow.
For sure.
I think, but with all kinds of annuals like this, I think it's always kind of a hit or miss package of what you get. And it also kind of helps showcase sometimes when there is really kind of standout talent between like certain people. Like for me, I think like the Spider-Man, Dan Slott did the Sinister 60th, which is one we loved with Peter Parker as a older Peter Parker. Jonathan Hickman did one that's kind of really very Hickman-ish, but works incredibly well for what it is, where Peter's kind of in this kind of junction point for the Spider-Verse, and he's talking to other Peter Parkers from the multiverse about, what are you doing? Like why is it I always end up basically a loser, and is this like a common thing? And then they have this fun with him, and they mess with him, and they all are like, no, dude, it's just you. And he has like this real crisis of conscience first until they're like, no. And then it's a lot like the first story. I think these annuals are best, and this is best when it kind of is just a rumination on who Spider-Man is, why he does what he does, and what effect that has, which is all three of the stories we mentioned. The first story is about him and why he is a street-level hero and will always kind of be a street-level hero. The Hickman one is about him kind of knowing his own resolve and why he kind of endures all these hardships. And the 60-year-old one is about, the city of New York and people appreciating Spider-Man and who he is and doing all that stuff. So those are always really good, but some of the other stories are not as strong. Right. And it just showcases when there's real talent like Hickman or Dan Slott, and I forget who wrote the first story, but it's good. So it's hit or miss, and there were a lot of hits in this.
Yeah, I think the batting average was pretty good, solid on this. And then we'll move into another longer book here.
Anthony Falcone was and Michael Cho did the first story, which again,
it's a great lead-off. I thought it set the tone very well. Harley Quinn, the animated series, The Real Sidekicks of New Gotham. I had to literally pull up the title again because it's such a long title. But this is, I remember when we talked to T. Franklin about the previous series, and she was super excited to talk about Vixen, and like Vixen was going to come in, right? Yeah. And now, to me, Vixen and Elle are they're actually the stars of this book, and Harley and Ivy are just this kind of fun, really fun kind of not background, but definitely supporting characters, and they bring the fun and they bring the chaos a little bit, and then they have fun mixing around, especially with like Vixen's kind of torn between the fact that she is a full-time hero and her partner is like friends with these people that she would typically put away in jail and stuff. And so there's a lot of interesting things explored there. And then, of course, you get like the fun, tawny segments in between. And then, like, as the issue goes on, it's just more kind of like a typical, anthology. It's really fun. I actually really enjoyed the Clayface Psycho Joker storyline. And then we get a two Joker story towards the end. Did you see the part I was talking about?
I was just fast forwarding. I was just skipping to it, but I honestly don't want to spoil it for myself because I'm so excited. But I will say this book is like so satisfying if you are a huge show fan. Like, I love the show, and everything about this book has been so fun, and it relates.
I
straight
sense
back.
it.
Uh-oh.
I sense it. I feel it.
Yeah, this
So I'm
was.
curious. So
Doing-
we won't spoil that last part, by the way, because I do want next week.
Yeah.
Let me know what you thought of
Okay,
that.
but I do have to say, just before Kofi talks, thank you, Kofi, he's like, do not freak out about reading this entire thing. And I was like,
for
bless
sure.
you, kind sir, I'm trying to plan a wedding. So I only read a few, so I want to hear what you have to say,
For
Kofi.
sure.
No, this was the one that made me think you've gone mad with power in this comic segment. Yeah, you handed us an 80-page book.
I'm sorry.
Which
there
is
was
like a
lot of them.
novella. Like, I'm not reading any comic book novella. The Spider-Man. Listen, I tap out at like 60 pages. That's about the most I'm going to do, and that
I'm
has to be
so
like
glad.
an annual or a trade. Like, unless it's a trade or a graphic novel, like I tap out at 60.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say bad things about Harley Quinn because I love Harley Quinn. I think it's a great cartoon. But I think you have to be a very dedicated fan of the show
Right.
to read this. I think I'm never a fan of this whole, and this goes for Harley Quinn, the X-Men stuff, the Batman stuff. I'm just never a fan of when we try to recreate, especially cartoon or animated series in, like, reverse engineer them back
Gotcha.
into comic
Okay.
books. Because I just end up reading like it's the cartoon. If it's done well, I can read it like it's the cartoon. But for a book like this, I lasted 20 pages and I was like, I can't. Like, I just can't because Harley Quinn is so high octane. Like,
That's true.
it's hitting you like all the time
And
with
this is not.
gags and
That's true.
zaniness and jokes.
Yes.
And I was just like, I can't read 80 pages of this. I will go insane.
You would have to take your time.
Yeah, no, it's just not for me. I just need to see 20 minutes of the cartoon,
Yeah.
and just be out. Like, I can't do doing this in a
Yeah.
whole immersive world. It's just not for me. But I am going to go back and see this Joker story since you teased it.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah, I was
gotta-
just
I
like, this
gotta read
man's
that
gone
one.
mad with power.
But I do agree. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. By the way, in that this issue is too long. Like, I understand. Like, this issue is too long. The Batgirl story, I enjoyed parts of it, and like, I'm just like typically oh my god, I cannot talk.
Predisposed.
Thank you to liking Batgirl stuff, but like, I didn't need that story. I was very the Joker Psycho story was fun. But I didn't need, like, they could have cut whole chunks of this out and I would have been just okay with having the Vixen, L stuff, and then if you want to tag in the Joker stuff at the end, cool. I would have been fine with that. So this was too long for me. And I actually took it in multiple sittings. So I totally with you on that, and I agree. Also, this is not as fast-paced as the show, so I agree with you. Like, I would have totally loved to have seen an episode condense this and work around this and give us, like, the best parts.
or just like a feature, like a longer one.
I would
Like a
totally
longer
be cool with
episode.
that. But I
I'm
did
not-
enjoy
yeah,
it.
I'm not going to, like, I'm not bad-mouthing this comic.
Right.
Because I think the people who make Harley Quinn and people who write the coordinating comic did a good job of recreating the animated series as a comic book and
Yeah.
giving you a lengthy
Yeah.
comic book to spend some time with. I'm not mad at that. It's just, it's going to hit a very specific target audience.
Agreed.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm it. I'm like a casual fan of the show. But they got renewed for season 4.
Yeah,
Harley
it
Quinn season 4 is
did.
happening. Yay! Yeah, we got
Great.
some good and bad news on the DC front this week. Yeah. Harley Quinn season 4 got renewed. Yahya Abdul-Mateen apparently doesn't like Aquaman 2, and
Oh, God.
some other stuff is happening. Yeah, he called his role in it a clown role, so
Yeah.
that sounds good.
So with that, let's move on to
And
some
DC
Marvel.
Fandom isn't happening, so
Yeah.
great year. That
Oh,
DC thing we
God,
did last.
no.
I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah,
What?
no.
So
DC
sad.
Fandom got canceled this year, so there's no
That
DC
is-
Fandom. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
boo!
Isn't that
What?
unbelievable?
Yep.
Oh, that
Yeah,
sucks.
They got nothing to promote. They got nothing.
That is.
I mean, what are they going to promote? They're going to go over all the dates that move. It's just going to
so
be a
sad.
recap of, like, yeah, I get it. I understand why. I guess I understand why they're not doing it. However, they do have a ton of comic stuff coming out. They also have a bunch of, like, Batwheels is coming. Like, they still have other Black Adam. They still have other stuff. But I do understand to a point of, like, with their
But
TV
you gotta
and
listen.
movie.
See, you gotta love just, excuse my phrase, but you gotta love the bullshit of the industry. Like, here's what Warner Brothers Discovery says. With the return of in-person events, Warner Brothers Discovery is excited to be able to engage with our fans live at numerous Comic-Cons around the world and will not be scheduling DC Fandom for 2022.
Wow.
What I will tease, though, is we might have some cool stuff coming for we got New York Comic Con coming up.
Yep.
Right?
There
We
you
might be doing some cool
go.
stuff
There you go.
with DC, so maybe there's a silver lining. So I will move into the last book.
And
of
yeah,
the
they
week.
will. They confirmed to us, comic book, that they will be at NYCC. but no word on who will be there
Yeah,
or
we'll
what.
see. So Thunderbolts #1, which honestly I thought was going to be the most divisive of this thing, because it's been a little divisive online. Not even like just in a super polarizing. Like I feel like you either really like this book or you didn't like this book, just because of the approach it takes. This book spins right out of Devil's Reign. Fisk doesn't have his, he created his Thunderbolts. Everyone, of course, now knows that all that was a sham and everything. And they've now made Luke Cage their mayor. And so now Hawkeye is kind of he wants to get back on the West Coast. And he's like, oh, let's start up the team and stuff like that. And then through a couple I thought it was really interesting. Like everything I didn't like about this issue initially, I ended up kind of looking at a little differently as it goes, because it kind of goes back in these flashbacks throughout the issue, filling in blanks. So like when they would say certain taglines, I was like, "What? That sounds so corny. Why is that there?" And then you realize, oh, it was literally a marketing thing that someone gave to them that they have to say. So like some of those pieces started filling in, and I actually enjoyed it more as I read. But here he ends up having a team picked for him. So Hawkeye is the leader of a team. He has a team picked for him. They've done all these PR groups of like, here's who would work together and here's who goes well with this audience. And then they have like the market. It's a brand. They're very much treating it as a brand. And then you kind of realize that he wasn't even the first pick for the leader of the team. And there's all this other stuff going on. And also there's a couple characters that you don't really know so well. So it actually works as hey, let's introduce some people and also kind of put a platform on some people and lift some things. And we got a big name in Hawkeye, right? I just love that America's part of the team. I love that Monica's part of the team. There's some really, I like I don't even know, I forget his name, the Cable dude. He essentially reminds me of Cable so much, and I forget his name now. I'm blanking on his name. But he's kind of the central mystery or whatever. So there's just really...
at the end, he's having a moment.
So there's just some really fun concepts here. And at first, I didn't know how I felt about it. And as I went through, and even towards the end, I was like, okay, I kind of like what we're doing. I see what we're kind of being meta about some things and playing with some, ironically, very real concepts of how a superhero team would probably be put together in the real world. And Jib Zub is always good for some jokes and things like that. So I ended up liking it, but I was like conflicted for a while. And I'm very intrigued to see where it goes next, but that was me. What'd you guys think?
Me too. I'm excited to see, or I am intrigued. Intrigued is a good word. But I definitely, I'm excited to just see any characters that are not our mainstream characters that we're just seeing all the time. Like Batman, obviously, not Marvel.
No Batman this week.
But yeah, no Batman. Even though I love Batman, it's just nice to get familiar with some of these characters that I need more exposure to. So, and it was just easy to like see what they do and what they're about. And the only thing that is like rubbing me the wrong way is like, would Luke Cage really be that, like, would he really care that much what people thought about him? Like, we need to get focus groups to figure out who would be the best for PR. I don't know, that just so is not a Luke thing to me. Like, he seems like he's like, I don't care what people think of me. Yeah. Is that in my head? I don't know why. I just was like, I'm not buying that he is this mayor that really cares, like, about, like, oh my gosh, we have to make sure that we sign up people that will hit these specific demographics. And
I got more of the impression that it was kind of being like forced on him a little bit, but also I agree with you. Like, there is a fish out of water nature to him right now.
That's purpose.
Maybe that's a purposeful thing, but I agree. That's when you describe Luke Cage mayor, I don't come away going, oh yeah, he probably had this like these things tested and he thought, oh, this would grow. He was like, here's my team, here's whatever. But I think they do a decent enough job of kind of explaining like all the parameters that have to be in place to make it work. Yeah. So it was a little exposition heavy there, but I got why they were doing it. It was kind of like, here's all the reasons why we can make this book. Here's the reason for the book existing. What did you think of it?
I think there's a lot of fun in this, but like I don't know if this book quite knows what it is yet, and is still kind of figuring out. And I'm not sure that the hook they're going with is going to be kind of sustainable. There's a lot, like, I don't know if this book is taking itself seriously. The character we're talking about was named Guts and Glory, who's like a futuristic, it not even got like on social media, started a whole stir because Rob Liefeld kind of got involved in that and was like, who the hell is this Cable knockoff? And, people were just, and even the creators of the book were just like, Rob, chill, like,
I mean, he is clearly inspired by Cable,
Yeah,
but I thought that was the whole point.
That's what they said. They said, like, chill, dude. This is like our homage to 90s cyber soldier kind of mania. Like, you weren't the only one to ever create a cyber soldier in the 90s, which, very much not. Like, everybody and their mother had a cyber soldier in the 90s.
Right.
So, Guts and Glory is very much supposed to be a spin on Cable. Like, but it's like, is this a derivative satire? Is this like a real kind of workplace comedy, like drama? Like, what is it? Is it an adventure thing? I don't think this first issue does a good job of kind of laying out or attaching enough stakes to, like, what is the hook? I mean, the first Thunderbolts book ends with this massive kind of fun twist and stuff like that. That's how the series kind of hooked people. This is just kind of, I don't know what it's going to be, and I feel like I'm not trying to be down on it, but I feel like at this early point, this could be like one of our more forgettable versions of the Thunderbolts that we saw. But we'll see. We'll see. I hope this is not the MCU thing. I really do.
Yeah.
I also think that I think you're right, as in opposed to, hey, we're villains, like that kind of huge reveal for like the book. They tried to take a character approach and go, hey, here's like a small reveal for like each person, right? So you're like, America barfs when she tries to use her powers and she's like, that's not good. Clint sees like the darker version in the mirror. Like, everyone has their own
is she
thing.
Pregnant? Like, that's literally what I was thinking. So in these kind of things, they tried to like, hey, here's something for everybody, and like maybe one of those or two of those will get you. Yeah.
I think maybe that's the approach they took. I was kind of hit and miss on it. So I came away kind of like, I'm very intrigued to go into issue 2. I'm gonna give it another issue to really see if it hooks me. But I didn't come away like, yeah, that's like one of my favorite books moving forward. Like, I have to read that. So I'm kind of, I agree with you though. I think it needs to find its footing. It needs to She-Hulk episode 3. And once it finds what it is and can run with that, I think it'll be off to the races.
I'm interested, so I would be down to read that one.
But that's comics.
Yeah.
All right, that'll do it for this episode of Comic Book Nation, your one place where we do it all for geek culture. You can check out any of the larger topics we are discussing on the comicbook.com website, where we have different channels for Marvel, DC, anime, wrestling, everything. So be sure to check out comicbook.com. Be sure to subscribe to the Comic Book Nation YouTube page, where we drop episodes every week, plus our own original content videos where we'll be kind of reacting to things and just talking about other stuff. We're also going to get a community tab apparently started, so we can kind of interact with you guys over on the YouTube side a little more often, and besides just talking during the show. And if you want to follow any of us, you can also follow Comic Book Nation on Twitter. You can follow me at Kofi Outlaw.
You can find me at Matt Aguilar CB.
You can find me at Janelle Wheeler.
And thank you for tuning in as always. And have a great week out there in geek culture. And we will see you guys next week back here on Comic Book Nation. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Deuces.